I'm stuck behind somebody in the highway going 45. I'm in New Hampshire, so the speed limit's probably 70. No, I think this is 65. They want to go 45. So I decided that I'm going to make a video on my ride home here. Because I was thinking. Okay. How do I even break this down? Where do I begin? I was talking a lot yesterday with a friend, or a couple days ago with a friend, about artificial intelligence. And the idea of living within a simulation, living within like a construct that's non-social, that may be by design. I mean, I don't even know if I can do this topic in the 20 minutes that I have per drive. I'm trying to figure out where I would even start. So let's start with AI, in case I need to cut it short. It'd be just, this could become an AI video. But the first thing is, there can never be true artificial intelligence. There, by definition, there could be artificial intelligence, meaning a robotic intelligence that is spitting straight knowledge back at you. But when an organic intelligence that at least has the preconceived idea of free will interacts with its surroundings, you're not using pure intellect or knowledge. You're also using wisdom, and within that wisdom, maybe some political know-how and such. So when they talk about the singularity and when they talk about artificial intelligence, there's a couple things you have to break down. So one is, even nowadays on a day-to-day basis, when you speak about a topic, depending on the individual and how intelligent they are, how wise they are, how much data they can understand, interpret, extrapolate forward and backwards, understand valid concepts, the logistics of the argument. The average person, and let's say in the United States, the average IQ, let's pretend that the average person has 100 IQ or whatever, or however you want to look at it. If it was F was a failure, D was passing, C was average, B was above average, and A is top echelon. The average individual is a C. So they have a C knowledge of the stuff that they interact with. So if you can create a computer program that can grab, explain, regurgitate, and change data to an extent of a C+ mindset, then the individual that's got a C mindset or below is probably going to interpret that information, machine technology, as artificial intelligence, because there's no difference to them between an actual real intelligence and the artificial intelligence giving to them, because they don't have the information or capability in their DNA structure or parameters to decipher that. And I'm talking about, individuals over the age of 26 that are fully developed brain stuff, be the equivalent, when you have a child or people that we know on one extreme that are mentally deficient. When it's on the extreme end, most people can recognize that there's an issue. As people get higher up and they get into the B, graded as a B or a couple deviations above the average or deviation above the average IQ, they can decipher and see more of the puzzle, which means the AI would have to be more advanced. If they were to be able to create a pure information, garbage in, garbage out data calculator, it would be similar to, like, I know what 1 + 1 is, but I can put it in a calculator to show somebody how to use it. 1 + 1 = 2. And I don't want to get into that being problematic right now, the Orwellian stuff that's going on. But conceptually, in physics and mathematics and stuff, absolute 1 + absolute 1 = absolute 2. Then you can take a calculator and start multiplying stuff out. Somebody may not know the times table, and some people may know the times table, and 5 times 5, absolute 5 times absolute 5 = absolute 25, and the calculator can do that. When we then put in 1,150, 2,554 times whatever, there are people that can calculate those numbers in their head, but most individuals can't. But the calculator can calculate that number for you based on the algorithm, the coding and stuff that's been put into that calculator. And you don't have to put in every combination into the calculator's coding prior. You just have to put the principles in of mathematics into that calculator, and then it can do that math and spit it out. But most individuals that have a grasp of reality don't believe that the calculator has mathematical cohesion, understanding. It's not extrapolating principles of mathematics in there, and it certainly isn't going to come up with new mathematics. It's garbage in, garbage out. So even though you put large numbers in there, if the screen on the calculator is big enough, it's going to help you do equations that you could probably do on paper, worked out, and some people could still do in their head with other systems in it. But now instead of numbers, if you add words into the equation, if you add phrases, if you have colloquialisms, if you add jokes, if you allow it to pull from all this other data and put it together, it can still create similar equations and larger equations, similar to that calculator, where you can put data into it, it can calculate the data, and it can spit out an equation for you. And there will be another point where that calculator does that information and the calculations on that higher scale of garbage in, garbage out, which undeterminable for you. You can't tell the difference between a real person doing it and a fake person, or this quote-unquote artificial intelligence. But the question will be, can or will it grab enough data in and out that one day that it starts creating its own principles? So we've been using calculators for a long time now, and no calculator that has been in creation, and I'm not talking about just a normal calculator, I'm talking about very well fine-tuned calculators that can do trigonometry and cosine and sine and graphs and stuff that are programmed in large mega calculations that physics people use to check their work and vice versa. They're not using computers to do that. they're using the creativity of math geniuses in order to re-evaluate some stuff and add to it. And they've been doing this for quite a while before artificial intelligence, in the manner that we talk about it today, trying to replicate the human experience in a robot, have done. And none of those computers have ever created a new math thing. And if and when they had, it wasn't because they jumped script. It was because an individual that was coding it put in improper information, and then it spit something out, and then that sparked something in the human that was then looking at what it spit out and got them thinking in another direction. So the question here is, or for me, is not as much as will artificial intelligence ever be created, because for some people it will be. Like I said earlier, if they can get enough knowledge coming out quick enough at like a B+ level, then anybody with a B mindset below is going to look at that and say, yeah, that's artificial intelligence. And then everybody with B+ to A- and above is going to have a huge advantage over people that cannot decipher the difference between one or the other. It will also help them because when you're trying to train people, and I've done this in the past when I was running businesses, it's very time consuming, mentally draining to repeat and retrain people over and over again. So you'd be able to, how we do training videos online, you'd be able to basically write a training video and put in principles and put in these technologies, and every time people typed in, if they couldn't remember 1 + 1 is 2, they could type 1 + 1 and it would spit out 2. And then you could type, and then further along the line, you could type ONEPLUSONEEQUAL, and it would tell you TWO. And so you'd be able to put enough data in that when you're training somebody, it could keep spitting out the same data to you, but rephrase it differently so it seemed like a different answer, which would then appear to the person that was training back and forth that they were having an experience with this tool that's training them. Enough that it's going to save a lot of time for individuals in particular process, but it's not actually going to ever jump off the screen like a sci-fi movie. This spark, the reason for me at least, and I mentioned this maybe in some other videos depending on if I release this or not. So if I just strictly do 1 + 2 = 3 in my mind, and I go through all the data, I am an atheist. Whereas the definition of atheism is, I do not believe in God. It's not making a statement of the existence of God. It's asking me my personal belief. And my personal belief is God does not exist based on the information. However, it doesn't stop there, because as an individual, I believe in free will. I'm not a determinist. So I then use my free will to believe in God and act in a manner if God exists on a day-to-day basis with my life. I started that experiment. You can try this as well. And over time, I started collecting anecdotal evidence. And people say, well, that's not fact, that's objective. And it's like, anecdotal evidence is evidence. It's just anecdotal. So I'm an individual. I'm not a collective. And so I started this experiment of living my life as if God existed, because I have the free will and ability to believe. And call it what you will. The most common name, I guess, for it is faith. You just have faith. It's logic is one thing. Reason is one thing. You need to be able to, 1 + 1 = 2. With faith, you don't. You can make a big leap and then run experiments. So it's similar to the scientific method versus the Terek method or some other methods of learning that different civilizations have used, where you can put the hypothesis wherever you want. You can decide if you're going to try to work it backwards or forward. But in the end, you're looking for the evidence. And I get it. People could say, if you're putting the answer as God exists and you're working backwards, and then you run your experiment through the bias of wanting that to exist after you've made that leap of faith, and then you do certain things, you will then take the answers that you then receive in that anecdotal experiment and process them mentally through a bias, which would be like a confirmation bias, saying, okay, I want to act as if God exists. I want to start doing these things. My life should get better. My life starts getting better. Hence, God exists. But that's not the point, because it's similar to a placebo effect, whereas if you give somebody a sugar pill and you give some of the actual medicine, some of the people with the sugar pill will get better. So they're having, and they say, oh, it's a placebo effect. They're just giving it. So what is it? Because they're still getting a real life scientific objective effect. I haven't really figured all that out yet, and I don't think everybody else has, but there's definitely something in the brain that can go through as far as priming, self-belief, understanding, chemical release of happiness, control, and stuff throughout the brain. Anyways, I'm getting away from the AI aspect of this. So I'll just end this as far as this has been just a neutral thing for you to think about. I'll do, I guess, in the future, if I remember, a video about, is it good or is it bad? I see it as a tool. And I think when people like Elon speak about his fear of artificial intelligence, the fear comes from the fact that computer speed, processing speeds are rapidly increasing forward. It's like the calculator is getting bigger and faster and quicker. The amount of input and data that's going in is getting bigger, faster, and quicker. And it's garbage in, garbage out. I guess I got to do this now. I'll do this now. So the way coding will happen in a lot of situations is somebody will write some raw code. They start with an app. And if it's open source, people can look at everything on that code. They can go through it and they can change bugs, they can add bugs, they can fix it, and they can start structuring it. And then similar to like a blockchain, if they want to change it this way and they want to change it this way, and people don't agree, you can branch off into two and you can have competition within that code. When the code is centralized and you have multiple people doing it, sometimes you'll have some errors and some bugs within that code. Stop here. I'll put a pin in this and let me talk about a creative element. So I don't know if you've ever done art. I was in a punk band for a while, and I hope to someday go back to the punk band. I miss it. So if this channel gets released and I get big enough, I'm definitely getting the punk band together, and we're going to tour, and I'm going to do punk music and talk philosophy. That'll be fun. But when somebody does comedy, or when somebody does live performance, or somebody does music, when I would do music, I would write everything down on a piece of paper, and I would have these words. Or sometimes I would have a melody or a beat, and then I'd be like boom, 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 and then the words would kind of come to my head. Let's ignore that sometimes you get so into it that you don't know where they come from. That there's kind of like another voice writing it for you, and just go into that. It's me and I'm controlling it and I have free will, for the sake of this argument. I then bring that to the band and I start talking to them and they start playing music. And then they hear it and I'm like, what speed do we have? And the drummer starts making a beat. And it's very generic. Ba-ba-bum, 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 drum beat. It's going to be this speed or whatever. It doesn't really have any extras in it. And then they start playing a chord and they start playing a bass line and I start doing the lyrics. So then you start practicing that. And in the middle of it, the guitarist is like, you know what? I'm going to write it and play it like this. This is a little bit more fun. So they're not changing everything. They're just taking the riff that they're doing and changing it a little bit. They start practicing like that. And then the drummer hears this and the drummer's like, was doing boom, 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 and then he starts changing it. And you're acting with one another. And then my vocals change because I want to have fun with it. And I'm playing, and maybe, where there was no words or nothing, I just start saying or doing gibberish or adding words or changing something as the flow. And it keeps changing and mutating upon itself. Then you take this in front of a crowd and you start playing it, and you get the energy of the crowd, and you're going back and forth to the crowd, back and forth to the crowd. And now this thing that's kind of have its own mind gets mixed in with the crowd, and they're cheering in this part, so you get more excited, and it changes into this, this, and this. Then you leave and you practice it some more, and what happened within that crowd becomes part of you, part of this. So there's this essence to the music and to the song that it becomes its own living kind of entity. Now, stop. Back to where I put a pin into when I was talking about coding. I'm in America. I'm coding. I'm putting this stuff in. There's a guy in India. He's coding on the same project that I am, working on another part. And I got a guy in China working on another part. And I got a guy in California working on another part. We're all doing these parts. And we're not malevolent. We're not evil. We're not trying to mess this thing up or ruin people's lives. We're just trying to do our job, which is to code into this thing. And a problem occurs, and we need to fix it. And those people are like the musicians that I spoke about, putting information into this organic, or to this machine that's becoming its own entity of data. And something there's wrong, that's an error, so it needs to be fixed. So you do this and it doesn't fix. You do this and it doesn't fix. You do this, it doesn't fix. Then you do this and it fixes the problem. Now the question comes, okay, you tried to do 4 things and it didn't fix it. But on the 5th thing, you fixed it based on the response that the programming gave back to you. So now you're done and you walk away. And the question is, who just fixed it? Was it giving you feedback and you kept putting data in until it was corrected? Or is it amalgamation of the other people that are working together? Where does that energy that just fixed that come from? Now, imagine this large scale where you have an open source AI that's feeding data back and forth from individuals that anybody can ask questions for, and it can remember data back and forth and answers and questions and back and forth. And it's doing this all simultaneously, all at once. And we're all feeding into this giant database. Unlike currently, when you work with Google or TikTok or Instagram, they have these algorithms that they're pushing stuff to the top. And then even when stuff goes trending, they got a ways around that. But what happens when the data is coming in and going out so quickly that they cannot control that anymore, and the processes can go so quick? That's when you have to start asking yourself, who's controlling who? Where is that coming from? Where is that spark of knowledge? Back to the coder. He puts 3 things in and it fails. He puts the 4th thing in and it works. But why did the 4th thing work? Who accepted that the 4th thing worked? Obviously, it's just garbage in, garbage out from other programmers, but it's all these programmers all together at all times. And they're just given a job, fix A, and they fix it with B, and then they walk away. But that might cause problem C, that somebody else goes in the same thing, and they keep putting garbage in to garbage out until the problem changes. And at one point, there'll be this machine that's just collecting, spitting, getting data put in and spitting it out and processing at an extremely fast rate. And if there was malevolent individuals that were pumping evil into this and it was spitting that out, I think that is what somebody like Elon is worried about. Because it wouldn't take too many bad actors to put garbage in to get bad actions out. But I also believe that it wouldn't take that many good actors to pump good into it to get good out. In the end, I'll do another video about the simulation and why I believe it feels like we're in a simulation to an extent, and based on the way that our minds process our surroundings, but also the fact that we kind of are in a simulation, but it's not like the holodeck on Star Trek. It's more like an organic dimension of fabric that we're on top of throughout the universe. That makes sense. But if you like topics like this, I mean, maybe somebody's already making videos like this. I don't know. I'm not finding them. And maybe they're not popular. Maybe this won't get any feed. But this is a really interesting mind experiment for me. Very amazing information to share. I'm curious to what people would think. And even when I listen to Sam Harris, or I used to listen to Sam Harris, I used to listen to Lex Friedman, I used to listen to Jordan Peterson, they just keep repeating the same topics. And maybe that's because algorithmically they get pushed to the bottom. They can't, there's certain topics that you become, similar to the input out. Like, so they're like, I want to get my data out there. In order to get my data out there, it needs to get views. In order to get views, what do I have to do? And how much do I have to compromise myself to get the views? Because if I 100% myself, I get 100 views. But if I tweak who I am by 5% and I'm 95% myself, I get 100,000 views. So is it worth compromising 5% of me into the beast in order to get 95% of my information out into the beast? Because similar to AI, there's a social network that's not on the thing, like just social construct between individuals of what people enjoy and what they don't enjoy. And some of that can be manipulated through verbal cues and poisoning of the well and schooling and propaganda and stuff. But there is definitely certain ways you can present stuff and say things that will get feedback. And just tweaking it a little bit. Same with music. Like, you make a song that's 100% organic in yourself, gets 100 views. You tweak it to make it a little bit more popular, gets 100,000 views. I mean, from a strictly chemical point of view, the dopamine and serotonin release of the 100K views will probably take most individuals and get them to compromise their ideas to the point where they don't even know who their true self is anymore. So, but I don't want to get too far into that topic. Anyways, just some food for thought. Hope everybody's having a great day. I think today's like, it's like April 4th or something. I don't know. It's beginning of April 2023. It's Wednesday, so whatever that is, the first week of April. So hoping for some springtime soon. All right, I guess I should make some more videos like this in my studio. All right, take care.